this pain of coming back to life. I feel everything, everything. When I open my eyes, your face, I'll never forget. Your horror, my pain, I'm alive, living again. I feel every stitch and every scar. Father, what's my purpose? Abandoned, left for dead, a monster. Why have you forsaken me? Accept me as I am. You feel like a god. Do you feel like a god? Creating without thinking, no pros, no cons. You let me walk, you let me see, you let me feel. I found her, but she did not know me. I reached for her, but she recoiled in horror. I wanted to beg anything for her love. The look on her face, I want out of this place. Father, what's my purpose? Abandoned, left for dead, a monster. Why have you forsaken me? Accept me as I am. It doesn't matter, it can't matter no more. I'm incomplete, I'm missing me. The world is darker than I remember. I wanna love her, but this heart is not mine. I wanna touch her, but these hands are not mine. I wanna tell her I love her, but this voice is not mine. Looking into her eyes, I saw how love dies. Now that's where her body lies. Father, what's my purpose? Abandoned, left for dead, a monster. Why have you forsaken me? Accept me as I am. Revenge shall be mine, I'll catch you in time. You gave me the pain of coming back to life. I want you to see me, look what you've done, what you've done. A man no more from a madman's hands. I walk alone, no part of me is home. Place me back under the stone. Father, what's my purpose? Abandoned, left for dead, a monster. Why have you forsaken me? Accept me as I am. As I am. What's my purpose?
All right, folks. Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner. This is PRT. Join us in the real reality, and here we are. I have a guard in the hospital, so I got to get started here. Don't have time to wait for everybody to get in, and we got to get this show on the road, as they say. Please pray for Chris. He's in the hospital. It's third day in there.
About stacking gold and silver.
Just letting some people get in the chat here, folks. I'm going to say hello, my co-host.
Nice to be here, everybody. Once again, I am in this spot. Hope everyone's doing good on this Sunday night.
Yeah, just so you know, there is a button that you can push that will pan the camera over to you. You don't do it a lot. I end up having to do it because
I thought you already pressed it. That's why I didn't.
You don't see it on your screen there.
It's a little bit delayed.
Oh, so what that is? Are you watching on your phone? You don't have a screen over there.
No.
I guess because there's a screen. But okay.
Yeah, so I have to watch it on my phone. I guess.
Oh, that sucks. I didn't know that. Because I guess that's when Nellie's on. Because there is a screen we have that we use. I don't know where it's at. Anthony is busy tonight. He is studying for an exam. He's got a test he's doing, and so me and Tony have to pick up the slack, which means basically it's me. Let's just be honest. Let's not mix words here.
Wolf is picking up the slack, and I am also here.
He is also there. That's what.
I exist in this world as well.
Here's something interesting. Today I was getting some food for my wife because she likes this place down there by our place. I personally don't like it. It's a Vietnamese restaurant, and there's nothing personal against the Vietnamese people. I think they're great, other than the communist thing. I'm messing with you, Tony.
I don't know. I'm not going to disagree with you on that.
No, because his family actually they actually fought against the communists.
Yeah.
But anyways, here's the thing. There's another Vietnamese place I like a lot. Sunflower. Yeah. That's my favorite. And I'm not one of those brand people like, oh, I drink Coke. I won't drink anything else. I drink Dr. Pepper or whatever. I don't drink soda anyway, other than this kind of soda, the prebiotic. But here's the thing. They have the best spring rolls.
I think they have a lot. Like their menu is really good.
I don't like I don't like spring rolls typically.
Yeah.
The place I like to go to, I really don't like their spring rolls that much, but this place has good spring rolls, and so my wife really likes it, and so I go there, to get her food, and then I go somewhere else to get mine because I don't like their pho, and they don't have the curry coconut dish that I like from Sunflower. So, you go into these different places to get food or whatever, and so I went into this other place that is we've become friends with them, and their food's a little heavy, so I wasn't going to eat it today. But I went in there to say hi, and Anthony was in the other place or whatever, and I started talking to one of the workers, and this isn't the Vietnamese place, this is another place, but I went in there while I was waiting for Anthony to grab Nellie's food, and I started talking to them, and they asked me how things were going with the show. And I told him, I said, it's been so. And he's like, how's work going? Whatever. It's just steady. It's got a little bit slow, but he's at the show. And I said, one of the things, him being an owner of a business, he asked me, he goes, you still enjoy it? And I was very honest with him. I said, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I'm really excited to come to the studio, and other times I'm not. And it wasn't like that before all this crap, that went down with these maniacs. And I just thought, you know what? There has to be something to do to get the joy back in it, to where it's not like a drag to be here.
Mhm.
To where sometimes you feel like being here, and the other times you just feel like you're being pulled through. And I don't want that, because I don't do this for money. There's not really a lot of money to be made here in this, especially now. But I'm not. Thank you for the donations, those people that donated. I'm not like always happy like I should. Um, and so the people that have done what they've done, they just rejoice in the fact, and they're always bragging about how they've taken our numbers down and they've done all this stuff and that. And and it takes forever to get things done. But I want to tell everybody that's listening here, I want the joy to come back for me and for you and for everybody who's involved in this. So we're going to do everything we can to. You can't ignore these people because they go around to all these other channels and try to cause problems. They go door to door, just trashing, talking trash, and just flat out making things up. So you have to address it at times. But I'm going to do everything I can to just try to bring the joy back to myself, because it was a question that was posed to me, and I just thought, am I still happy here? And the honest answer is I don't know. And if I don't feel that, I'm going to reevaluate everything at the end of the year, and I'm going to see where I'm at. Because if I'm just up here, doing this, and there's nothing to be gained by it, one way or the other, and I don't mean monetarily. Thank you for that donation. But I just mean like my own personal happiness in doing it, because that was the sole reason that I let Armando talk me into doing this. And then when he bounced and he gave me the suggestion that I should just get out of this because there's nothing but a bunch of lunatics in it, he was right. I should have bounced, but I didn't. I stayed in, and now here I am. And I've grown very close to a lot of my listeners. And I realized something. Last night we did the Patreon. Last night was the Patreon live episode.
Exclusive.
It was an exclusive live Patreon episode, and we did the story of two guys and their girlfriends, Kevin and Griffey, who were friends with the Calhoun family out of California. Well, it's not the Calhoun Ranch anymore; it used to be. But we did their story exclusively on the Patreon, and I enjoyed it. I think at the most we got like maybe 27 people in there, maybe, or something, during the live stream, but it was fun.
Yeah, it was cozy.
It was nice. And we just had people who were 100% dedicated to listening, and you're paying for that, and I think that is kind of where I want to be. I don't care if the chat is huge. I don't care if, we have a bunch of subs, we used to have, our growth has, it's been all month long, and we can't even get to 46. It's just been at 45.9 like the whole month. And yeah, I'm just being brutally honest with you guys, and I have to be honest with myself and our team. The stuff that's gone on has choked the hell out of our growth, and it's choked our just everything. And we don't buy subs. We don't buy views. We don't buy anything. And these people can lie and say what they want. They obviously have no sense on how things work. I see them saying the most ridiculous things all the time. Like, there's a man that passed away recently. And yeah, one of them, I'm not even going to say his name, but he's a stupid liar. And he's sitting there going like, yeah, I had a lot of respect for this guy. Dude, this guy talked so much trash about that dude to me. So much. And now all of a sudden you had all this respect for the guy. I didn't. I'm not going to lie either. I don't sanctify people when they pass away. I'm just not that guy. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to make up something about somebody and just be like, yeah, we were best friends. We weren't. I'm not going to say, a lot of people, I saw him attack a lot of people in this community. And I saw those same people on there being like very respectful and talking good about him, whatever. I wasn't one of them. Nope. What you see is what you get. I'm not going to go over there. Somebody that passes away that I had no like respect for, no love for. I don't hate the guy. I don't dislove him or dislike it, whatever you want to call it. But I didn't have any like compassion or feelings for, whatever. I'm not going to go and lie and pretend like I had a great relationship with the dude because I didn't. I only had one problem with the guy ever, one time. And that's because they attacked my wife. She got invited by somebody, I guess, who didn't know any better. And they went into that group and she tried to tell her encounter and they all just jumped on her. That's what that group was about. It was all about skepticism, but it was in a nasty, mean, vile way. And I got to say, people have asked me my opinion on him. I don't have an opinion on that dude. I just know what he did to my wife. And I said, I did something back. And I said, I'm not going to take that. She didn't do anything wrong in that situation. She did nothing. And so these little maniacs that are talking until this lawsuit's hit, which they're going to hit, they're going to say what they're going to say. They're going to have their time because they really don't believe that it's going to happen. But I can't wait. I want to be in court with them. I want to be there. And they can bring all the crap that they said we did, whatever. There's a timeline there that shows their actions and our retaliation. But that has gotten old, and people don't want to hear about that. So what I'm going to tell you right now is the show is going to be about the show. And I'm going to try to ignore the noise from these ignorant people. They're very ignorant people is what they are. And not one of them should ever be mentioned or named again. They don't need any airtime with us. They live for us to say something so they can run around and say that they're important. They feel important. I'm just going to make sure you don't live rent-free in my head. And, but when somebody passes away, they use that as a way to attack me. They brought it up and tried to use it as a way to attack me because 2 years ago or something, I don't remember, it's been about 2 years. They attacked my wife in that group and I said something to that guy. And then he followed me to my page and a bunch of people said something to him and he left. End of story. So I have nothing to say about that guy, because I'm not going to say anything good. So I'm just not going to say anything. But I'm not going to go around and be like, oh, he was a great guy, man. He was like, because I don't think that. I do not. And just because someone passes away doesn't mean that you should sanctify them and put them up on a pedestal, because I don't do that. I've been very honest with everybody here, brutally honest with you guys, and I'm brutally honest with myself. One of the most important things, and we're just going to talk about until we get people in here, but one of the most important things you got to do, folks, and I'm going to tell you this, I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you this, you got to be true to yourself. I think there's a lot of people running around, especially in this community, who are not honest, not just with you guys, but not with themselves.
Yeah.
I think they make themselves believe their own bullshit. Just about every encounter I've told on here, with the exception of the haunted tower, and actually there's legal document guard logs with my name on them that can attest to a lot of the things I talked about because it happened. And I don't know. I could just tell you this. I mean, there are people who will talk to themselves, I guess, to the point where they believe their stories or whatever. I don't know what they're doing.
Hypnotizing themselves.
But I have people who were with me when this thing happened. This guy wants to say that my encounter didn't happen, whatever. No, buddy, because at times when I've even questioned my own self and my own sanity and wondered, like, dude, golly, how could this really be? My friend was with me and he's still there preaching in my hometown and his family still lives there. And they can all attest that this really happened. So there are times when you want things to not be the way that they are. Like with my wife's health and with other people's health, like my brother's health. I would love for them not to be not doing good. I would love for them to just be completely 100%. My friend who came on the show and told an encounter, his name's Chris. He's in the hospital, been in for 3 days. I'd love for Chris to be okay. He's a good guy. I like him. I get along with him very well. He's a hard worker. He helps us in our company. He's picked up the slack for me and my business partner big time. And now he's in the hospital. And, you want that to not be the case, but it is. So when people say, oh, well, he's just pretending like, his wife is sick or whatever, or this isn't. No, it's happening. And it is. And these things that I've talked about have happened.
Well, it just shows the sickness of their mind that they could even believe that, even believe that someone would do that sort of thing, because that is probably something that they would do. But the fact of the matter is we would prefer nothing more in the world than for it all to be false. But it's unfortunate that the things that we talk about and we speak about are the things that actually are occurring or happening to us, and the things that we have to deal with. And, to be made fun of, to be harassed, to be attacked over those kind of things is really disheartening. And it also is, it's very stressful, especially on you and Nelly. And I just, it's tough to see how they've turned such an enjoyable and energetic and like kind of felt like a familial thing that we were doing here.
It is a familiar one.
Yeah, into just this nonsense of like having to deal with them and having to see how they have treated the community and the things that they're doing in the community. And was never our dream of what we wanted. What we wanted was to bring everyone together so that we could figure out what the truth is to these paranormal aspects, Dogman, Bigfoot, aliens, everything. And now where all it is just bogged down fighting that we're having to deal with. And it's really stressful.
Yeah. I mean, nobody wants to sit here and deal with this, But yeah, here we are. And my thing is too, I know in my heart that things will get right. They will be made right. They will get back on track. I didn't want to have to take it as far as we're going to have to take it legally, but it is what it is. And thank you for the donations, folks. We appreciate it. We are doing the food drive. We paid for half of it. We got to pay for the other half in a few days. The hoodies, I'm not 100%, but it looks like some of them came in.
With the boxes I brought in, it looked like the hoodies. I didn't open them up because I had to head out for work. But when I brought them in, they were like they were addressed to Paranormal Roundtable, so pretty positive those are it.
Those are going to be the hoodies in.
Yeah,
good, awesome. So the hoodies are here. happy about that, and that cost us almost $4,000. So we're putting our money where our mouth is. And what I told my friend who's got a restaurant here, and he's hardworking guy, he's an immigrant, came here when he was 14, and he's got a business, and he's a nice guy. And we started talking, and he's 67 years old. He's still working. It was always his dream. And so we were sitting there talking. I'm sorry, he's 63 years old, and we were talking, and he said that he's like, dude, he goes, if you enjoy doing the show, keep doing it, brother. He goes, if the joy is gone, he goes, I enjoy coming to here every day to my restaurant. And he said, if there was no joy in it, there's no point. And so I have some evaluating to do. I'll come in. Sometimes I'll be really tired. I don't feel like doing it. Then I'll get going. I'll get started, and I have fun.
Yeah,
and the energy is there. But I want this to be a safe place. I don't mean this in I need a safe space type of way, but I need, I want this to be safe from trolling and from people clipping videos and taking things out of context to lie, steal, and create all kinds of mayhem. So I'm afraid, though, probably at the first of the year, we may cut the live streams down to one a week on YouTube. And it may just we just may go to pre-record, and then any live stream we do, it's probably going to just be on the Patreon. They did that. These people did that. So I want it to be safe. And I just don't want to be, doing a show and knowing like 10, 12 people in here that are watching are just trolling so they can, cause mischief. And saying cause mischief sounds kind of cutesy poo. It's not cute. That's not what they do. They are malicious. They cause untold damage to people around them. And they're even fighting each other now. I mean, it's just, they are just
the nature of evil. Turn on everything.
thinking about these people, you know, and so that's where I'm at with this, you know, and so it's nothing about wanting to just hide all the material. I don't want to hide anything from anybody. I'd love to just be out there in the open and be able to do and say whatever. But these people don't want that, and they're not going to stop or rest until they get what they want. And to hell with it. I mean, let them have it. Who gives a shit at this point? I mean, I don't care. I just want my peace back. And God willing, you know, this stuff will go through. Right now, it's so hard right now, though, because it is, you would not believe how professional people are. I'm going to say this because I know a lot of my audience is not a professional audience here. Paula King, thank you.
Thank you so
for
much,
that
Paula.
donation.
That was
really
amazing.
helps big time. But, you know, there's not a lot of doctors and lawyers. Now, there are 2 doctors I know of 100% that do watch the show. There are 2 lawyers that I know 100% watch the show. And then my 2 lawyers, of course, do watch the show. But I don't have a whole big bunch of like doctors and lawyers and people like that. And I have a couple of day traders. Or one of them is a good friend of mine, and one of them has been really friendly with me and helping me. So, you know, there are some white collar type professional people that watch the show, but not a ton. And then, of course, I have a few insurance agents who do very well, and a bunch of nurses that do watch the show. But I have a lot of blue collar people that watch the show. I do. I have farmers and ranchers, and I have all kinds of people. One guy's there's several people that have told me they're welders. There are people who move furniture for a living. They do a lot of blue collar work. And that's just what I know of. I really don't know how many. I don't know. I don't know the exact numbers. But I can say this: they don't do things the same way we do. Like people that are in the upper echelons, you know, of society. They don't look at things the same way. They don't, you know. I've worked for and bodyguarded and done a lot of work for very wealthy people over the years, and got to know a lot of different people in different fields and professions. And I can say this: that the thought process, the mentality is just different.
Their perspective on life.
Yeah, it's just a different mentality, you know. And so I look at things more from the perspective of like you guys. Like we have a certain type of middle class, you know, whatever. And that's where I'm at. I'm firmly in the middle class. I'm not rich and I'm not poor. But I've been, I guess, by societal norms or whatever, I'm successful. And I think that one of the things, you know, I look at in my audience, I know that we're not wealthy people. You know, I know we're not. And so I know that we're probably going to be where we're at, you know, in this life. We're just going to be where we're at, unless you win the lottery. You know, you're just going to kind of be where you're at. And when I do make money, I always end up having to help people and do what's right and give it to people. And I think that that's what you're supposed to do, because God knows, and you should know this, you don't take it with you. When you go from this earthly plane, it doesn't matter how much wealth you've accumulated. You're not going to take it with you. And I think that's one of the things that people lose sight of, especially at Christmas time. You know how many people have messaged me and said that they don't like Christmas? Flat out just told me, I don't celebrate Christmas. And then they'll use all types of mental gymnastics and every type of, you know, it's a pagan holiday. It's a this, it's a that. Yeah, okay, yeah. And for me, it's the birth of Christ.
The time of giving.
You know, I celebrate Christmas, I celebrate Easter, and I look at that as the birth and the resurrection. And if you don't, that's up to you. You can do what you want. But a lot of it just seems like it's a lot of, I'm going to be honest, I think it's a lot of selfishness, because you don't want to have to give to people. And I'm going to be honest here, and this is an attack on wealthy people, or there's a couple people I know that are actually really wealthy that listen to the show. And there's no attack on you guys. Okay. But for the most part, really wealthy people, they have a tendency to keep their money. And some would say, well, that's how they got wealthy. Not necessarily. They made good decisions or they inherited it. It's pretty simple. But they seem to be the ones that want to give the least when it comes to Christmas, or to do things for people. And I'm going to tell you, I've seen the poor people. You go to the poor neighborhoods and they have lights. And lights aren't the decorating your house is not cheap. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not. The bigger the house, the more it costs too. And the middle class neighborhood I live in is just everybody's decorated.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple streets that are nothing but all of them just decked out.
Very beautiful.
And the poor people, very, very, very decked out. You drive out by the lake, but they're very wealthy people. Not one of them has Christmas lights. You can go across the lake, look on either side is blacked out. Nobody, they do not acknowledge Christmas. Now, a few of them I saw decorated for Halloween, but not Christmas. To me, that's just a shame because I know those people and they're the Scrooges of the world. And I'm going to tell you this. There are a couple stories I'm going to be doing coming up here where I honestly feel like this is real life Scrooge coming up next Sunday. Because I think that people need to hear it. I think that people need to be made aware that this does happen. Now, I don't have a story for you that is just like, Fruition says, satanic. Who said that? My brother said that. Yeah, Fruition, it is sad. It is. And, you know, I don't have a Scrooge story for you to do for you because I just don't have that. I do not have that to give you. But I do have a couple stories where people were afflicted with certain things. And one is a Dogman story. And I've waited. I got this story, and Tony knows this. I got it at the end of January, right around your birthday. Mm-hmm. And we were going to tell it. But Tony was like, no, wait until Christmas.
Yeah.
And I said, that's a long.
I was like, trust me.
And then we forgot about it. Yeah, we forgot about it. But luckily, we were doing the patrol. And for some reason, Tony sees an owl. And thinks that oh, no, that was Anthony. Never mind. But he saw the owl and says, you know, we should do a story about Christmas, you know, something, whatever. And I said, how did this owl make you think that? We saw an owl because it was cold as hell. And I saw something weird last night on patrol. I'm not going to say what it is until I talk. It was
pretty creepy.
It was creepy.
I'm not going to say I saw anything, but based on what you told me, give me the
two things I saw. One I saw before when we were in that area, and then when we went back. I saw something else. So I'm not going to even. I told Anthony about it. I'm going to wait on that one because I don't know what that was. But last night was hell night because we had this one complex. We had people just getting partying, and I just asked a woman a simple question and turned into you're harassing me. Mm-hmm. And just going off and talking crazy to us. And I'm like, wow. But it seems like Christmas does one of two things. It rejuvenates people or it brings them down. Yeah. And there's a lot of that right now with people going, oh, well, I don't want to celebrate Christmas. I'm broke. You think I'm not? I'm still doing everything I got to do to help people to do what's right. You know, if you have $10, take $2 and go to the dollar store or whatever and get the two people you care about the most something. Giving will make you feel so good. I'm not talking about giving it to us. I'm talking about you going and taking your money and giving it to the people you care about, that you love, and that you're close to. And, you know, I promise you, I can't say 100% how it's going to come back, but God will give it back to you. He always does. I'm telling you, he always does. And that's the thing I just wish people would remember at Christmas time. Help out people. Be a little nicer. Can you imagine if we kept doing it? You know, be a little nicer to people at Christmas time. A lot of times it could carry over into the next year. Tony, your family celebrates the Chinese New Year. I would call it the East Asian New Year because everybody in East Asia celebrates it that way. That is y'all's version of Christmas. It's like Christmas and New Year's rolled into one. And they tell you, all my Asian friends, and I have a lot of them, and they'll tell you, Wolf, don't be angry going into the new year. Peter, you know, my jeweler, one of them. He's Vietnamese guy. He's a Christian guy. But he goes, don't be angry going into the new year. He said, on that day, you have to be clean. You know, go in. Your mother told me that for years, too. She's always like, don't be angry. We'll go new year. Yeah. No talk to client. No do nothing. She told me that. She's like, you stay home. You just sit there until it's over. You know, calm, peace, no anger, no talk on phone. And she's right.
Yeah, it's funny. Pretty much every year, like a couple weeks before the Lunar New Year, we'll sit there and clean the entire house, get all our laundry done, get everything that we needed to get done, just basically clear house, you know. And then on that day, it's just basically about being the best you can be and bringing that kind of good energy so that that energy follows you throughout the whole year. And it's very important to be kind of experiencing, you know, happiness and experiencing giving. That's why on that day they'll give red envelopes full of money. It's because not only are you, you know, helping others by giving them money, but then you're also receiving money. So they hope like throughout the year you'll continue giving and receiving money.
Very important. And I've celebrated the new year with you guys, and I know how important that is. And everybody has their own traditions. And for me, you know, me and my family, we're not going to be able to do Christmas Eve and Christmas because we all have to work and do stuff, but we will do it in between during that week of Christmas to New Year's. We'll be doing what we got to do. Here's what I got to tell you. And then we're going to get started on the show. The story I'm about to tell you has two parts. The first one, I don't know if I can get into Dragutin's story. Now, I know that sounds weird. I called him Dragon. He would always tell me humbly, "That's not my name." I go, "Well, I'm going to call you that because Dragutin is you know, it's as close as Dragon, you know."
Yeah.
So whatever. But the truth is, there are Croatian people who actually go by Dragan. That's the truth. His name is Dragutin, right? But I called him Dragon. That's just me. But that's not the first story we're going to tell. We're going to try to get to his story. If we can't get to his story, then we'll do it on Wednesday. All right? The reason that I saved these Black Eyed Kid stories for now, because I mentioned one of them, I think, back in October, is because they happened in the middle of December, both of them. And so I thought this would be a good time to tell these stories. Both of these gentlemen were very good friends of mine that I started out just working with and ended up becoming really good friends with. And one of them came to work for us for a little while before he passed away. Unfortunately, Elijah passed away a few years ago. And his brother, I got in touch with him back in early September to go over his story to make sure that I was going to tell it correctly, because he had told it to me before and I thought I had it memorized, but there were a few other little details. His brother has heard the story 3 times. It was very profound for Elijah. And so Elijah is a Black man that I became friends with, and he was, I don't want to say, because his brother said that he was never tested for this, but I think he had Asperger's, in my opinion. I think that's what it was. Big, strong guy, worked out all the time, and the nicest guy you would ever meet. Like, he would literally, like, if we worked together, which we did a couple times, he would always be like, I'm going to go grab some food, you know, and if that's okay with you, he'd always ask very politely, and he's like, and if you know, I'll pay for you, you know. And I said, "Nah, man, if you're going to fly, I'll buy." So I would always have to argue with him, and he would always like take my card, and then he wouldn't charge me. And Dragutin was kind of the same way. He was a really nice guy, and I don't know what happened to him. I have lost touch with him. I haven't talked to him in 10 years. Last time I saw him, he was working security at the mall when I was there one night at Lakeline. And Scorpion knows him very well. He used to work with us at a place called Garden Terrace. We don't have that account anymore. We don't do it. But he worked for those, and he worked at a retirement home that we both worked at. So the place where he worked at and had his experience, I worked there. And we worked together at this place called Garden Terrace, a very haunted place with a lot of weird stuff. I've talked about it before.
Energy's horrible there.
Oh, it's horrible. You've been there. You've worked there. Yeah.
And I hate working those kind. There's 3 of them, and I hate them all. Yeah,
the terraces are. There was 8 of them.
I remember only working 3.
There was Arbor, Garden, Capitol.
I didn't work Capitol.
Skyline. I mean, there were so many of them, dude. There was the other one down south. Anthony probably knows. I can't remember the name of. I don't remember the name of those. But Zane went unconscious in one of those. Mm-hmm. He passed out. Like, he went unconscious. Like, something just made him black out, and he ended up going to the hospital. Those places were pretty bad. They were built. They were acquisitioned for people who had down their luck, like people who they would let people live there, and as long as you passed the drug test and you weren't drunk, they let you stay there if you were homeless. There's a long waiting list, but people can just be sober for a little bit and then start doing it when they get there. That's what they did. So the places were kind of bad. So that was Dragutin's. That was his. He's a Croatian guy. Came over here during the Civil War, and he was a nice guy. I got along with him. Now, some people didn't like him. He had a very dry sense of humor, and there was a deep sadness about him. So people kind of, they were just, I don't like that guy. I understood it. I had a strong friendship with him. Like, I understood how he was, and I get why he was that way. And he would talk to me, and he would tell me, because I feel like I can't really talk to people. He's like, I can talk to you. You kind of understand. And I felt like I did. I understood his situation from being in a war-torn country. And I know a lot about the history leading up to that war and that war itself and what ended up happening. Yugoslavia was divided up into different countries. And so, yeah, we would talk a lot, and I understood his mentality, I guess. Mm-hmm. But we'll start with Elijah. Elijah and me met years ago when we were working at a security company together that no longer exists. And he was a standing guard at that time, and I was a patrol. I wasn't a captain because I didn't want to be a captain because it was a lot of responsibility. I was a lieutenant. And so I would go and check on the guards as part of my job in that area that I ran the route, which was the south. I had the south central route at that time. And I got to know Elijah. He was always, like I said, a very nice guy. And there was another guy named James who was always happy, always smiling, who passed away too years before Elijah. But he was also African-American. I say African-American, I say black. He's a black guy named James. And he introduced me to this guy. And he said, hey, he's like, do you think you could put in the word to Jackson? Jackson was our boss. Real cool dude, man. One of the greatest guys, ex-Marine, great dude, man. And he said, hey, can you put in the word to Jackson? Because me and Jackson worked together since the early 90s at another company.
He liked you, too.
Yeah, he liked me a lot. I was like one of his favorite people. And he was one of my favorite boomers. And so Jackson called me Bubba. He said, all right, Bubba. And so he said, can you put in the word to Jackson? I got a guy who's my neighbor. And he's a really good guy. He's a hard worker like me. And I told James, I said, okay. And I met him there, and he just was standing there with his little lunch pail.
That's how you met Elijah?
Yeah, and Elijah thought he was starting work that day. So he came up with he was like, am I working? I said, no. And I said, there's a whole process you got to do to get hired. I said, but I'll put in the word for you. So that was on the Thursday. I went in on the Friday. I went up there. I was tired as hell. I went up there, and I told him, I said, Jackson, I said, as a guy that wants a job, and his name is Elijah, and then James is his friend, whatever. And he's like, well, I like James. He kind of stopped what he was doing. He leaned back. He was always eating lunch on the fly every time I talked to him. There was always a sandwich on the table or something. And he says, well, what do you think? I said, I don't know. I just met him last night, but he was already ready to go to work. He showed up at the post. And it was at a plant we did. And part of the job was for me to go do the outer perimeter, these DTEX hits. And so that way James and them could stay in the plant and do their job because I was walking. There was a lot of walking. And he said, well, bring him in here. So I called James and said, tell your guy to come up here today at 3 o'clock. That was like 1 PM when I was there. I said, come up here and talk. Jackson's ready to talk to you, whatever. So I want to put in the word for him, whatever. Next week, he was already working. We got him going, got him working. He got him registered, whatever. He went through. Apparently, he already had a job doing security from another state where he was living at before. But the rules were a little bit different here in Texas. And so he got his stuff, and about maybe a week and a half later, he was on post.
Did he get recertified, basically?
Yeah, he had to do like an update or whatever. It wasn't the whole thing, but so I showed up one day, and he was there working. And I remember this, the first time I talked to this man, in an actual, not just meeting him, but talking to him, he comes up to me, and he says, hey, boss. And I'm technically his boss, but not really. I didn't, so I was like, I'm not your boss, man. I'm just the guy that does the hits here. He's
like a supervisor.
Yeah, this guy, he was very respectful of the fact he goes, you outrank me. So I'm going to call you my boss. I said, well, if you want to, call me whatever you want. He says, with all due respect, he goes, I don't like this place. And I said, well, what is this, your second day? And he says, yeah. I said, well, you're going to have to take what we give you. And he says, no. He goes, you don't understand. He goes, I see things. Now, the average person is going to look at you and go, you see things. Probably 75% of that company was former military, or some of them were even off-duty cops. And I told him, I said, don't be saying that. Don't be telling people that. And he's like very innocent, he's just like, why not? And I said, Elijah, I said, because if you tell people you see things, they're going to think something's wrong with you.
They're going to get you for a psyche, pal.
And he says, I've always seen things. And he says, I know not everybody sees what I see. And I said, well, what is it that you've seen here that made you not want to be here? And he says, well, there is a ghost. There's a woman, and she died. And I'm like immediately, James came walking up. He was standing behind him, always smiling. James is like, hey, man, I'm sorry. I said, no. I said, you felt like you could tell me this, right? I mean, but James is just like, yeah, he wanted to talk to you. I don't know what he was going to say. And Elijah's like, I'll be right back. And he says, I got to go to the restroom. So he takes off. Me and James start talking. And James is like, he's a little odd, but he's a nice guy. He's like, I think he can see spirits. Now, I'd never had a conversation with this to James, like in depth. We did work at a place called the Hobby Towers, and that's downtown. You could look this up. I don't work there anymore, and I haven't for years, but it's haunted. And a lot of people who've worked there have said that it's haunted. And he says, you remember we worked at Hobby Towers? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, there was a spirit there, and I saw it. And he's like, and I remember nothing. That place was supposedly haunted. Nothing happened to me there. Nothing happened to me there. I would go into certain areas and I would feel something, but I would always volunteer to do the perimeters, which is where the homeless people were and stuff, so you might have an altercation. And I would tell the other guy to do the towers or whatever. And so I would spend a lot of time out on the perimeter and then sitting in the control room. But I did go up into the building a few times with new people, and I never felt or saw anything. I felt something. Yeah, I didn't see it.
It's pretty rare for you.
So James told me, yeah, that was weird because, I would see it or feel it. And James says, look, I saw something there. He's like, and whatever it was, I think it followed me. And he goes, and this guy, Elijah and his brother, they were his upstairs neighbors. And he said, for upstairs neighbors, they were very quiet. He said, and I saw this entity look like the Grim Reaper with red eyes. Now, I had heard that before. And I hadn't heard it really called the Grim Reaper because it didn't have a sight. It just looked like a cloaked figure there at the towers. And he said that this guy, he came downstairs and knocked on my door and said, Mr. James, he says, you have a haint. He's from Louisiana. And he says, you have a haint on you that followed you from your job. And I said, Elijah told you this? And he said, yes. So I'm sitting there in the truck, and I'm like, hold on, dude. So I parked the truck and I got out and I said, okay. I said, so he sees things. He says, yes. And there is a spirit here. And so it looks like a woman. Well, you can put in for extra hours, right? But I was doing a lot of extra hours on the patrol, which I didn't like. I'd like to do standing. It's so much more relaxed. And Tony, you know that.
Yeah.
You've done both. It's not as hectic.
Almost last night proved it.
Yeah, for sure. And so I put in to work a couple of days over there at that Portland plant. I said, let me go ahead and I'll work it. And he said, okay. My boss gave me 2 days over there. He goes, you can have Sunday and Monday. Those are my days where I didn't work at the club. I only worked at that time. I was only working Thursday, Friday, Saturday at the club. I didn't work Sunday. And the rest of the time I worked patrol. So I was doing 3 days on the patrol, and then I had 2 days off, but I could put in for extra hours. I said, well, I don't want to do 5 days on the patrol right now. Just give me, because it's 12 hours. I'm doing 60 hours a week plus three days at the club, plus doing the liquor order over there. I was just working all the time. I said, give me a couple of days at the plant. And he says, okay. So they rotated me in. And for 2 weeks, I worked there. 2 days a week, two weeks. On the fourth day, the Monday, because I worked it 2 days, but I didn't see anything. Nothing happened to me. I heard a woman scream. It sounded like a woman's scream, but it sounded like it came from outside. But when I went up to the window, now I didn't see a spirit or anything like that, but I heard a woman's voice. And when I was looking out the window on the third floor, I think it was, or our second floor, I look out this window and I hear this footfall behind me. There's like these metal grates, you know, and I thought I saw somebody go behind me in the window. You could see the reflection. I turned around and I was like, "What the heck?" So I was working with this other guard, and he ended up working for me years and years and years later. He passed away too. You know, Oscar.
Mhm.
He worked for us, and we're working with this other guard and at a different site. And I said, "Had you ever worked at that place?" He said, "Yeah, I did." He goes, "And I saw a woman, like a woman vanish."
Mm.
When I asked the people in charge there, they had not been there since the beginning, but there was a rumor that there had been a couple deaths there, and that one was supposedly a female. She was an immigrant worker, and supposedly something had happened to her. I don't know, but I could not verify that. That's just hearsay, you know, as far as I know. But Elijah saw it, and Elijah saw what James had followed him.
Attached to him, yeah.
Yeah. And so James went to church and, you know, had a preacher help him pray, and he felt like he got rid of whatever it was. But the fact is that the guy, he was legit. So anyway, that particular night, he comes back and I said, "Elijah, you know, if anything else happens, just, you know, tell me about it, whatever." I said, "But don't tell the other supervisors. Don't tell them, you know, that you're seeing ghosts because, you know," and he's like, "Well, yeah." He goes, "I talked," and there was another a field captain. He says, "Well, I talked to Captain so and so." I'm gonna say his name. He's like, and he said that the LBJ building was haunted. Not that. So I said, "Well, let me talk to him about that." And so when I talked to him, he told me. He says, "Yeah." He says, "Yeah, I told him that the LBJ building because it is." And so I was 100%. I was like, "Okay." I said, "But he told you about the plan?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I said, "Oh, thank God." So at least one other supervisor was not going to be,
Understanding,
yeah, was not going to be, you know,
skeptical,
yeah,
obviously,
and
of
be
him,
mean to the guy, you know.
because he seemed like a nice guy.
He was. He was a real nice guy. And so years later, he left. He moved away to go to work in Dallas. And I just happened to run into him at a convenience store when I was gassing up my truck one night, you know, and I was coming back from the club. I'd been working late, and he was but he was doing the patrol at that time for that same company. And I wasn't working with him at that time. I was already starting my own company. And I said, "Oh, what's up, Elijah?" And he said, "Hey," he always called me Mr. Wolf. And he said, "Mr. Wolf." I said, "What's going on, man?" And he's like, you know, talking to me. He says, "I like your truck. I'm going to get a truck like that." He goes, "My brother's best friend runs a dealership up in Dallas. I'm going to be working for a dealership for a little while." And I said, "Oh, really?" I said, so you're moving?" He says, "Yeah, I'm moving to Dallas." And so I gave him my phone number. I said, "Well, here's my number. I've had the same number for years and years." I said, "Here's my number. Just call me. You know, if you ever come back and you need a job, because I'm starting a company myself, I'm starting a business." He said, "Oh, that'd be awesome." He goes, "But I got to move. I'm going with my brother." And so his brother worked with us too. His brother was a real nice guy. And so I told him goodbye, whatever, and, you know, didn't see him again for about 4 years. Then one day, out of the blue, it was 2016, right before he passed away. And he passed away, well, not right before, he passed away a couple years later, but he called me in 2016. He says, "Mr. Wolf." I didn't even, the number didn't even, it was, I don't know what the number was. And I just looked at it and I answered. I usually don't answer numbers like that. And he says, "Mr. Wolf." And I said, immediately I knew who it was. Just from the way he talks, his cadence and everything. And I said, "Is this Elijah?" He said, "It is." And I said, "Are you coming back to Austin to work?" He's like, "Well, I'm actually living in Austin again." He's like, "And I just recently, you know, divorced my wife. You know, we ended up having a divorce with her. I didn't even know he'd gotten married." And I said, "Well, that's unfortunate." You know, I said, "But, you know, do you need something? You want a job or something?" And he's like, "No, I have a job." And he had a pretty good spot he was working at. And he says, I was working security up in Dallas and I had a weird thing happen to me." He goes, "And I thought you would be the person to tell." Right. Farisa says, "Place the mic closer to your face." Is it not, the sound's not good?
You guys can't hear? We turn it. That's all we turned up.
Banjo okay?
Just sneeze it.
Bless you. Sorry about that. I didn't know that the microphone was not. Nobody's. Can anybody else tell me this? Because I want to make sure. So
it sounds fine.
So here's what ended up happening. Because if I put it too close, it might mess up. It might actually mess up the sound. So here's what ended up happening. I told him, I said, I don't have time to take your story right now to hear it, because I told him, that I collected stories and I'd been doing it for years. And I told him, I said, I don't have time to do it right now, but I'll call you back in 2 days. And I did. And he was at work. And he told me, he says, I work at a high-rise building downtown. And he told me the name of the building, told me where it was at. And over the years, I've always been planning on going by that building and just never have been able to. I've been up there about 3 times and just hadn't had time to go to downtown Dallas and go and try to, But he told me, he says, I got a story for you. Not being that he wasn't one of those people that watched paranormal shows. He had an ability. That was it. He didn't make an issue out of it. And if you believed him, you believed him. If you didn't, you didn't. He was a very honest guy. So I 100% believe what he's going to, what this story is I'm about to tell you. He said that a few years ago, this was back in 2016 when he told me the stories. He said a few years ago, which could be anything. It could be 2011, 2012, 2013. I don't know exactly when, but he said a few years back is what he said. He said, I had been living in Dallas for several years at that time. And he's like, and I had an encounter with something. And he didn't really understand the phenomena. Like he didn't know that it had a name and that it was a very prevalent part of the lore and all that of the paranormal. He had not read Mr. Weatherly's book about black-eyed kids. And so he was not up to snuff on what that was.
Not familiar with it.
Not familiar. But he said one night, he goes, it was Christmas time. He's like, and I was working at this building. It was the day before Christmas Eve. He's like, and there was a guy that worked in that building who was exceedingly cruel. He was a mean guy. And he says, and that man was always getting people threatening him, people coming up there looking for him. And most of the time when I had to deal with somebody, it was because of that guy. And he went into a whole thing about it. We're not going to get into it. But he told me, he says, but one night when I was there, he goes, I would come in. I said, what time did you go in? He said, 6 p.m. You got off at 6 a.m., 6 a.m. Pretty standard hours. He comes in 6 p.m., gets off at 6 a.m., takes over for the front desk person that's kind of like a concierge / secretary. That's what we do a lot of times too. And so he says that this particular Christmas, the guy had left. He was living, or he was in Argentina for the vacation. He said that it was pretty cold at that time. And he had already dealt with 2 people who had wanted to cause problems. One was a guy wanting to bring a girl up there after hours up to his, and he couldn't let him in. He said, I can't do that. She doesn't have, clearance to be in here. And the guy got aggravated. He goes, the next guy came in and he was just really drunk and he ended up causing a problem in the lobby. And so he goes, it was already a pretty rough night. And he goes, but about 10 o'clock, it got weird, really weird. I said, so what happened? He goes, I'm sitting at the front desk and I look to my right and I didn't hear anything. I just, how you feel like when somebody's watching you? And I said, yeah. He says, I look to my right and I see these 2 little children. He said, they looked to have been about 8 or 9 years old. If I had to take a guess, they were a boy and a girl. The girl had pigtails. He's like, and I was just they were very pale. He goes, and they almost looked gray. It was very creepy. He's like, and I'm sitting there. He goes, and I'm looking at them and they're looking at me. And they're just sitting there, their arms behind their back. They're standing there. He's like, so I get up and I walk over to the front door and there's some glass doors. There's 2 big glass doors and then there's another glass on both sides. He was very just detailed. I asked him every detail. He said they were dressed all in black. The little girl had a skirt, like a long skirt and a blouse. And the little boy was dressed like, he said like a schoolboy went from like the 1920s or something. It's weird the way they dressed. He goes, but they looked, And he said that I stood there staring at them. Now, here's the thing. Elijah is one of those people, like, I mean, like he might just stare at you if you don't speak. Because some people that worked with him had told me, well, he's a little bit odd. I mean, yeah, he's a little bit odd, but he's harmless. He's a nice guy. But he doesn't always understand like social norms. Yeah. That's what led me to think that he might have been. His own brother said he might have been, but he never got tested. You know, they just, because, you know, he's a little older than me. So Gen X is just like, oh, okay. You don't talk, you don't whatever. You're just a big nerd, you know, and you get a dodgeball thrown in your face. There was none of this like, oh, we got to be nice to people who are, you know, whatever. Because unless it was glaringly obvious, you were just considered a dweeb or a dork or whatever, and you got picked on.
Kind of weird.
I'm not even joking. It was Gen X was brutal, dude. We were that last generation that was just not on board with autism or, you know, Asperger's. So we didn't understand it. Like not many people had it. But if you did, you're just probably going to get beat up and made fun of.
Ostracized.
You know what I mean? Or if you said things that were, ostracized, you're going to say things that were weird. You're going to, and I assume, and I never asked, but I think Elijah probably, well, no, I mean, I didn't ask, but his brother did volunteer that he got picked on. And I could see that. Like he would get attacked and picked on. Big, strong guy, but he didn't, you know, and I'm not talking like, he wasn't like the dude from the Green Mile, but he was pretty muscular, you know, like he worked out and stuff, like he went to the gym. Because at one of the sites we were at, there was this place called Vignettes, not there anymore. And me and Scorpion worked there, and Scorpion knows this guy. And he got in trouble, which he never got in trouble. You know what he got in trouble for? For going into the gym and working out. He got in trouble because he used his pass card to go in there. And he was just in there lifting weights and working out. So, and he did it a couple times. And I said, you got to stop doing that. He goes, no, Mr. Wolf, I gotta work out. So I told him, I said, Elijah, you know, leave the light off, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And he did. And then that was it. He didn't get any more trouble. And so he goes, I can still see, right? And I said, well, I went up there and I looked and I said, yeah, you can, the curtain with the blinds open.
You still make stuff out.
You can still make stuff out. I said, but they won't see you on camera. So that's how he got around that, because he wasn't going to stop doing it. And I told him, I said, well, you know, so he got in trouble working there. And that was the only time he ever got in trouble. And he said that being bigger and stronger made people not mess with him. Didn't realize until years later, after he passed away, his brother told me that he got picked on a lot in school. So you got to understand the mentality of the person that we're talking about, right? Gentle giant, right guy. You know, he's about 6'1". He's not a big, tall guy, but he's tall and he's very muscular.
Analyzes things, try to solve.
Yeah, he's very analytical. And so he was standing there looking at these children. He was observing them, and he goes, I was looking at their faces. He's like, and their eyes. He's like, oh, their eyes, Mr. Wolf. They were not normal. He goes, it makes me shudder. I think about this. His exact words. He goes, it's shudder. He goes, it makes me shudder. I think about this. He goes, I get anxious. Scare me. And I said, you know, I told him, I said, Elijah, you're a big guy. You know, you were afraid of children. You know, I just, at the time, you know, I wanted to know what he was thinking. And I thought about it, you know, quite a bit over the years. You know, and I always thought, you know, like maybe these things are attracted to certain people for a certain reason. Like, I don't really think, and this is my opinion, but I don't think they're going to come to a guy like me. I just don't. I think that they go to certain people that they think they can mess with. That's my opinion. That's what I kind of think. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm wrong.
Definitely feels targeted.
Thank you for that donation. Do what?
It definitely feels targeted.
It does. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, you know, Elijah's sitting there and he's looking at them. And I said, what did they look like in their eyes? He says, you're going to think this is nutty. He's like, but I was watching Shark Week. And I already knew what he was going to say. He's like, you know how those sharks' eyes they're just black.
Like a doll's eyes.
Like a doll's eyes, right?
Black and life.
And he says like that. Very predatory. Very, very, you know, and this guy's not stupid. He's actually a pretty smart guy. He's really smart. And he says, he's very observant, you know, and he says they looked like predators. Another thing he said that was really weird, and I don't want to get ahead of myself, is when he went home, he had a weird dream, and I'll tell you about it. But he said he was looking at these two, and then one of them just puts her hand out and pulls on the door. the girl. And then she takes her hand and realizes it's locked and puts her hand back behind her back. Both of them had their hands behind their back. And they were just looking at him and looking, and he's like, it's locked. And she's like, yes. And she's like, can you open it? Elijah, being very matter of fact, you have to kind of explain things to him, right? And he says, yes, I can.
You just sat there.
He just stands there. It's kind of funny.
I think I would like this guy.
Yeah. And so they were just looking at him, and they were like, and she's like, well, will you open it? And he says, no. And she's like, why not? And he says, because it's my job. And she's like, can you please open the door for me? And he tells her, no. Then the little boy asks, can you open the door for me? And he says, no. Y'all need to go on. And he says, I turn around, I go back up, and I sit down. It's 10 o'clock at night. He's like, and I just ignored him. And then I heard, he goes, at this point, I'm starting to get kind of agged. You know, it's a term we use to Gen Xers. He says, I get up, I walk back over. I said, look, children, it's 10 o'clock at night. I'm calling the police. You know, the Dallas PD, I'm going to call them because you're not supposed to be out running around at 10. At that time, he said it was like 10 something at night, at 10:30, whatever. Where are your parents? And they just sat there looking at him. He said, and then I just started staring at them, and I put my hands behind my back, and we stared at each other for a long time. And so I told Elijah, I said, Elijah, what is a long time? And y'all might think this is funny. You remember how we talked about pocket realities, and that's what these things do? They probably just take you into a pocket reality where you're in another reality. He said the time went by. He goes, and I looked up at the clock, and it was midnight. And I said, Elijah, you were staring at them for an hour and a half? He's like, not really, mostly just looking across the street. But they were there. He's like, but I couldn't stand looking at their eyes. He's like, I don't know why I stood there so long. But I finally realized, he goes, nobody was coming and going in the street. Now, there shouldn't be anybody coming into my building at that time because, you know, it's after hours. He's like, but there was nobody walking around outside. Nobody walking by. None of the homeless riffraff that's usually out there. It's just them standing there, being stubborn. He's like, these are the most stubborn children I've ever seen. He's like, and then I finally realized, oh, man, it's midnight, and there's 2 8, 9-year-old kids standing out here. I need to call the police. So he turns around, he goes, and I walk back over, and I grabbed the cell phone, started call the police. At that point, the little girl, he goes, there's like a crease right there in between the door where you can, there's like, you know, like it's open, you know. She puts her fingers through it and starts pulling on the door, and she's pulling hard. He goes, and it almost looks like the magnetic, you know, is going to give way. And she's like, open this door, sir. And he's like, no. And he goes, and every time I try calling the police, it just would ring and ring and ring, and nothing would happen. He's like, I tried the phone there. He's like, and then there's a control room around the other side. I walked over there, and I went into the control room, and I grabbed the phone. I started trying to call from there. Nothing worked. Busy signal on the phones there at the building, and my phone just rang and rang. Nothing would happen. Nobody was answering. And so he goes, I come out of the control room, and they're gone. He's like, well, thank goodness they're gone. Now I'm going to go do my rounds because I'm late for doing my rounds. He goes, I grabbed the keys. I looked out both ways, didn't see them. He's like, I'm going to be honest. I didn't open the door and look outside because I was a little scared. They scared me. He gets in the elevator. He goes up to the top floor, and then he goes, I do all my rounds around each floor. And of course, he tells me each floor. 14th floor, you know, this floor, that floor, 8th floor. And I did, okay. And I said, okay.
There was a plan on the 17th floor.
About the 6th time, I said, okay. I said, Elijah, I understand you each floor. You did the same thing. You went down the fire escape and you did your job. He said, yes, sir. I said, okay. And then what happened? He goes, well, I get back down. And it's an hour-long patrol. I had to stay up in there. And that's a little after 1 o'clock. He's like, so I get down. These creepy kids are not there. He called them that, creepy kids. He says, and I began to eat my sandwich. He goes, I always bring a sandwich. And that day, and he told me exactly what he had. He had a ham and cheese on rye. Told me all about it. And he said, and it was good. And I was eating it. And he said about the last bite, He's like, and I always like the last bite of my sandwich. He's like, I do this thing where I put I push the meat and the cheese down to the last bite. And I said, okay, cool. He says, and I'm about to take the last bite. He's like, and I see this kid looking at me around the corner. It's a little boy. And he kind of bonks his head on the glass. And I'm like,
he's outside?
Yeah. And he's like, what the heck was that? He goes, so I put my last bite of sandwich down. And he's like, and I get up and I walk over to the door. And I said, don't do that. And he does it again, hits his head on the glass. Then he steps out. So strange. He goes, he was almost sideways, completely sideways. I looked and I saw him. Both of his legs were on the ground. I don't know how you can contort your body like that. He's like, and it was weird. And he didn't use the word contort, but, to make your body do that. I said, it's a contortion, This kid walks out, stands up straight and looks at him with his hands behind his back and just pulls his hands out to his side and then just starts banging on the glass with both hands. And he's like, I'm not going to lie, man. It was very unnerving. He goes, and I became more afraid. He goes, and then I started feeling indigestion in my stomach. I felt like something in the pit of my stomach. And I said, child. He talks. He said, child, don't do that. Stop hitting the glass. Don't use your hands or your head to hit my glass. He says, and just then the little girl's right there and she's pulling on the door again. And he's like, and their eyes, man, their eyes were big, round, black, and bigger than they were before. They were unnatural. And then he told me something which was kind of interesting. He says, you ever seen gray aliens? I said, well, I've never seen one, but I know, yeah. And he said, that's what they looked like almost. Their eyes were just really big. They didn't look normal. He goes, but while I was standing there, the little boy's eyes just kind of got smaller and smaller and smaller until they were almost like a normal person's, but still maybe, about twice the size. And he said it was so unnerving. He kept saying, he goes, I was unnerved. He goes, and I backed up. He's like, and I walked back over to the desk and I called the police. But this time somebody answered and I said, look, I need police here now. He goes, and maybe EMS because something may happen to me. He was that afraid. He honestly thought that these kids, these black-eyed kids might do something to him. He said, I was terrified. Now I know this about Elijah. And I asked him, I said, did you have your Bible with you? And he told me, he said, Mr. Wolf, I'll never go nowhere without my Bible. I said, what did you do? He goes, I began to read the word of God. I opened up to Luke and I started just reading at random. I said, what happened? He said, nothing. They sat there. I said, they sat there. He goes, yes, they sat down and they were posted up in front of the doors. Both, one in front of one door, one in front of the other. And he goes, and I came out reading the Bible, reading out loudly to Luke. He goes, and then I felt like something come down heavy on my shoulders. He goes, and I knew it was an angel of the Lord. This is what he said. I'm not saying this is what I believe. I'm saying this is what he said. And he said, at that time, the angel of the Lord spoke, and I repeated the words. I rebuke you in Christ's name. I rebuke you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then they got up, took their hands out of from behind their backs, and just walked robotically down the street and left. He said about 15 minutes go by, the police show up. They're knocking on the door. I go to answer. I give them a report, tell them what happened. They asked to look at the cameras. He says, I took them to the control room and I showed them the cameras. Now get this. Let me ask the audience before we go any further. What do you think was on the cameras? Do you think that they saw something or no?
It was Spider-Man on the.
What do you think, Tony?
I'll give a little bit. I'll wait for them to see what they think, and then well, they're thinking the same thing as me. I don't think anything was shown on the cameras, or very little at least.
Nothing on cameras, blurry, haze, nothing.
Yeah, blurry. I was going to say like maybe just some shadows, maybe.
Well, if you think that nothing was on the camera, you would be wrong. Because the police were shocked. Because when they pulled up, there were no children anywhere to be found. And the report that he had given them was that there were children, right, acting unruly. And so the police drove around the block, and another couple came up and talked to him. He said, we got a unit out there looking in case these are actually children that are, out this late at night. They could be in danger. And they saw these children standing there. He's like, but the cameras were black and white. They weren't real good. But you could see, obviously, there were two children there on the camera. But they couldn't zoom in enough to really see the eyes. He's like, until toward the end there, when they stood up and they began to walk, he's like, one of the children's face could visibly change on camera. He said, when this child was walking, the right side of his face, the eye, you could see it enlarge and then go back down. He goes, and it's something that I didn't catch. And I told him, I said, Elijah, I think that was something that the camera caught because of they caught the speed of it. You know what I mean? Not the best cameras, but they caught something that the human eye didn't catch. And it's really weird with cameras because we have camera service too at our company. And I can tell you that sometimes the cameras will catch things that we don't. And then other times we'll see things that the cameras do not pick up. And it's just hit or miss. I don't know how to describe it. But he said that eye got large, and that police officer was like, whoa, wait a minute. It was a female cop. Women are attention to detail more than men. And she says, rewind it. He rewinds it. He goes, and it was so creepy. So creepy. He says the eye got bigger, and then it got smaller. The head kind of changed. He goes, and where the jaw was, this is the most important. He said there was like this weird mouth that did not match this child, and there was this like weird smile that went back halfway up to his ear, and you could see rows of teeth. Yeah. He said at that point, he goes, I had a reason to be afraid, didn't I? And I said, yes, you did, Elijah. He said, what do you think these things are? I said, I don't know. And he says, Mr. Wolf, I thought you'd have all the answers. He goes, you always had all the stories and the answers and everything. I said, that I don't know, Elijah. Now, this was years ago, like several years ago. And I told him, I said, I don't know what that was. I had not dealt with the black-eyed kids like I have up to this point, where I've fielded multiple encounters and things like that and able to come up with postulate on a theory.
Mm-hmm. At this point, you're kind of just getting stories from here to there. Really, your focus was Dogman and Ghost.
And I told him, I said, I don't know what that is, Elijah. And he says, well, it gets worse. I thought that was the end of it. He goes up into his building. The police leave, and he goes, about 2:30, I was walking up into the building. No, Elijah did not have children, fruition. No, he never had children. He walked up into the building to do his rounds. When he got to the top floor, he said this was right after the police had left, and he was kind of freaked out. He says, I'm walking down into the stairwell, going into the second, the next top floor, whatever. And he's like, and I hear this noise, like this screeching, screaming noise. And it's in the stairwell with me. And he goes, and I get so freaked out, dude. He goes, I just started running down the stairwell and ran all the way down to the bottom. He's like, and when I get down, the phone is ringing, the front desk phone. He's like, I go up. He goes, and I was already, afraid. And I said, you were apprehensive. He says, yes, apprehensive. So with a great deal of trepidation, my words, he picks up the phone. And he's like, hello. And he instinctively, and I did too at this point in the story when he was telling me this, he instinctively knew that was not going to be a human person normal on the phone. And there was a little girl's voice. And she says, why did you tell on us? And he goes, I could not talk to this kid. I could not answer this. And I told him, I said, that's not a kid. He said, yeah, you're right. It's not. And at that point, I asked him, I said, Elijah, what do you think it was that you were dealing with? And he told me, he says, Mr. Wolf, the devil. The devil. He says, I hung up the phone. He goes, and then I lifted it back up and I said, don't call back. And I said, were they still on the phone? He said, yeah. I could hear this screeching noise on the phone. Terrifying. He says, and then I hear it outside in front of the building again. Screeching noise. He's like, and I had to know. He's like, so I go to the front door. He goes, and I know this. Curiosity killed the cat, right? That's what he said. And I said, what did you do? I said, well, obviously you're not dead. I'm hoping that I'm not talking to your ghost, because that would be a weird twist, wouldn't it? But then Elijah says, no, I'm not a ghost. I'm alive. He says, but if I wouldn't have got my butt back inside, I might not have been. He goes, I opened that door and the sound stopped immediately. He's like, it was screeching, screaming, and I could tell it was muffled. It was coming from outside. And I opened the glass door and it stopped. He's like, and then I look down the end of the block and the little boy is walking towards me with this look on his face like he's going to do something to me. He goes, and then I hear footfall and I turn around. The little girl is running right up on me. He's like, and I jump back in and I close the door. And he goes, and it was just a split second. He goes, God, he's like, God was looking out for me, Mr. Wolf. He goes, I closed that door so fast. And this, what he told me, he says, I have this idea that it was the Holy Spirit. That I said, might have been. I'm sure it was. And he said, it told me, he says, do not let go of that door. It's like she had just managed to get her fingers into that door and was pulling. And I pulled as hard as I could. And I managed to catch the magnetic, on the doorstop, whatever. He called it something. He says, I pulled it and the magnet caught it. I forgot what he called it.
Like a strip?
Yeah, but he called it something else, the magnetic knob or something like that. But he said, I just pulled it enough quickly. And she let go. He goes, she got so angry when she backed up. He's like, her eyes got big again and her face distorted. And she was bigger, not taller, but bigger. She looked bigger. He goes, and I was so afraid. He goes, and then she screamed, but there was her mouth didn't open. There was nothing coming out of her mouth. He's like, and it was like a scream from a woman, like a grown woman. He goes, and I turn around and all of my insides hurt. He said, I was in pain, like from the bottom of my stomach or the top of my chest. He said, I felt this pain, like a searing pain. I said, what was it? What was it like? He said, it was like heat. Like my organs were cooking. He told me that. He said, it was like the inside of my body was on fire, Mr. Wolf. I said, he goes, and I ran back to the front desk and I called the police again. They said and Elijah, the way he talks, he said, they told me if I needed them to call them back. And so I did. And he said, so I did. I called them back. And I said, I need you. And they're like, who is this? And the lady didn't remember me. I said, you don't remember? I called earlier. I talked to you. I know. I remember your voice. She goes, oh, yeah, okay. He's like, it was a black lady. And I remember her voice. And he goes, and I told her, sister, I need you. She says, well, I'll send somebody there, She says, stay on the phone with me, Mr. Elijah. I'll stay on the phone with you. I'm going to say his last name, but she says, stay on the phone with me. Call him by his last name. And he says, okay. And she said, what are they doing? He goes, they're right here by the front door and they're pulling on it. And they're putting their mouth up to the crease in between the doors and they're talking to me. She's like, what are they saying? And he's like, they're demanding me to let them in. So she says, don't go to the front door. He goes, well, I'm already here. He's like, I'm standing there. And I'm like, what do you want? And the little girl says, we want you to let us inside. And he's like, why? At that point, there was a little bit of a dialogue there. And the little girl says, we need to talk to John. He's like, John who? And they said his last name. This isn't his last name, but it's, I'm going to call him John Sutter. They said, Sutter, Mr. Sutter, we need to talk to John. He knew who this guy was. This guy had multiple affairs. This is what Elijah had told me, and that he was doing all kinds of things. And eventually he got in trouble for doing things. I'm not going to get into it. But this man was, according to Elijah, not a good man, according to his brother, too, who also worked there part-time. Both of them told me, this guy's not a good guy. Mr. Sutter was not to be trusted. And then he said, why do you want to talk to this man? And she just said, because. And he's like, well, he's not here. He's on vacation. The boy says, when will he return? He says, probably after the new year. And the little boy says, we'll be back. And they walked away in two different directions. After they walked away, they were gone for several minutes. The police showed up. Once again, they looked at the cameras. Thank you for the donation. And the cameras told the story. There were little children there doing whatever. And this cop was freaked out. This was not the same cop from earlier. And he looked at the camera and he's like, what is this? He's like, I've never seen anything like it. What, these children, you were struggling with that door. And he looks at him and he tells Elijah, he's like, you're a big, strong guy. You're a mountain of a guy. Why would you have a problem? He's like, that little kid was strong. And the cop was just like, what am I looking at? Who are these children? Whose children are these? And they're like, and why do they want to talk to Mr. Sutton or Sutter? And he's like, I don't know. So he left a note. And in the concierge, the next morning, she comes in, you know, and he's good friends with her. He's like, I've known her for a couple of years. I worked at this building. And she says, don't worry about it, Elijah. I'll leave a note for him. I'll give a note for Mr. Sutter.
What kind of note can you give?
Well, just explaining that some people came by. He said, and of course, nothing happened the next day or the day after that or whatever. He said, but there was that dream I had. And I said, Elijah, what was the dream? He said, Mr. Wolf, he goes, we've been friends a long time. I know you hadn't heard from me in a while. He's like, but I still think about you sometimes. And I consider you and your family a friend, your brother. I like your brother. And I like Scorpion. I like everybody. And he knew Squid too. He knew us all. He knew your stepdad, Tony, because he worked with us for a little while too. And he said, you know, he's like, I like everybody. Y'all are good guys. He's like, I don't really have any friends up here. I don't really have any friends. I got married and the woman cheated on me and did things and, you know, took a lot of my stuff because he was a nice guy. Got taken advantage of. He said, and since I left Austin, I didn't have anybody to talk to, really. I don't talk to anybody. I said, well, you talk to me anytime. He said, okay, I will call you tomorrow. I said, okay. He said, and tomorrow I'm going to tell you about my dream. The next day, there were 6 missed calls from Elijah after lunch. And I had this, you know, I was working out there, I was doing security, you know. And I said, look, I called him back. I said, man, I'm asleep during the day because Elijah, I work. And he goes, Mr. Wolf, I got to tell you what happened. I said, what happened? He said, you know how I told you I was going to tell you about my dream? He said, well, I had a dream last night when I went to sleep. And one of those children came to my dream and said, don't you talk to that man. And I was like, and I told my brother about this. I said, you know, Elijah, he called me and told me, you know, don't talk to me. These demons or whatever they were, you know. And he told him, he said, because he had called, you know, D to try to get me. You know, my brother said, hey, you know, call this guy back. He's trying to get a hold of you. And this child had told him in the dream. The little girl was talking to him and says, don't you talk to that man anymore about us. You don't tell him anything about us. You don't speak on us. And he says, well, I'm going to call him tomorrow. He says he argued with him. And the little boy says, don't you do that. Don't you do that. And then he woke up. He says, and I stayed up all day. I've been up all day. I didn't go to work. I called in today. He goes, I'm not going to work. I'm talking to you, Mr. Wolf. He says, listen to me. He goes, I had a dream the next night. Because when we were talking about this, he said he had gotten tired, you know. And he's one of those people like, you know how Willie was? He was just like, I'm tired and go sleep. Yeah. That's how he was. He was just like, I'm tired. I'm going to go sleep. You know,
it's just a matter of fact thing.
Yeah, it's just very matter of fact. It's just not like
not really a feeling.
He's a very honest, just tells you
what's going on in his life.
Yeah, and some people think it's rude. Like you'll talk to him and he'll just be like, yeah, I'm bored. You'll be like, really? Because, I mean, there was this woman talking to us one time when we were working at this building. She was so full of shit. Let's put it that way. And she was annoying. She was fake friendly. And Elijah just got annoyed with her. And he was just like, yeah, I'm bored. He just kind of like
Walked off.
I looked at her and I was like, "Yep." Didn't say anything. I didn't go, "Oh, try to make an excuse or whatever." I just went along with Elijah. I was just like, "Yeah." There's like a fake yawn, like, ugh. And she just like looks at us with this look on her face, like nobody cares about your 20 cats, lady. Seriously. I didn't say anything, and I just kind of went like this, So she complained. She made up some stuff. So we said all kinds of stuff. No, we didn't. Elijah just said he was bored, and I just played along. And you went and said a bunch of nasty things because you're annoying. But I digress. Here we go back. And said, he's very matter of fact. So he says, I'm going to tell you about this dream. He said, and what happened to me. He's like, I'll never forget. He goes, I was being chased all around my apartment complex. I was out running around. At one point, I fell down and I was running around on all fours trying to get away. I said, what was chasing you? He said, these 2 black spiders. They were spiders. He goes, but they didn't have fangs. They had like this big mouth full of teeth. And they had like these little heads like that were kind of human-like, but not really. And they chased me everywhere. And finally, I floated up. The voice told me, it said, Elijah, float upwards. Get away from them. He goes, and I floated up and they jumped. And one of them put its leg on me and almost pulled my pants down because it was poking me. He goes, and then in this point in time in the story, he began to cry. He says, Mr. Wolf, I thought I was going to die. He says, and I cried out. My sister, who had passed away years ago when we were teenagers, I called to her. He goes, and I see this bright light show up, and she came out of that bright light, and those spiders ran away. They ran backwards away from her. And she took me by my hand and took me back to my bedroom and put me back to bed. And I woke up, and she told me, right before we left, I got down on the side of the bed, and I prayed. I prayed with her. And when she was done praying with me and for me, she touched my head, and she left. He's like, I stood up. And that was it. And I laid back down and I went to sleep. He goes, and I saw my body there. My body was there on the bed, still sleeping. And I got back in my body. He said, can you believe that? I said, yeah, I believe you. He says, I don't know what those 2 spiders were. And I told him, I said, probably the 2 entities you were dealing with the night before. And he said that I was late for work. I was still asleep, and I realized it was dark again already. I woke up and I called, and it was the first time. He's like, and I know this to be true because he worked with us. He's a very punctual person. And he says, I woke up and I called my boss, Thomas. My boss's name was Thomas. And I said, Thomas, I'm late. He goes, yes, I can see that. What happened? He goes, I overslept. So he goes, I drove down as fast as I could. It takes 20 minutes to get there. He's like, I showed up. He goes, and my boss was very nice about it. He said, that's okay, Elijah. You've never been late in over 2 years. You don't.
He's a good worker.
He's a good worker. And he says, my boss, he's a nice guy. He said, Thomas went and got me some food even and came back, That's a good boss. I mean, and that means he likes you because, you're late and the client didn't freak out, They called the company and thought something was wrong, and of course
they're more concerned about him.
They were more concerned, yeah. And then they went and got him something to eat. And he said the night before, he goes, and I put it in my report. He goes, and Thomas came back, and Thomas says, hey, Elijah, I want to talk to you about something that happened last night. The police were called multiple times. I read your report, and we talk. And he says, sure. So the property manager, he's there, and he tells him, he says, Elijah, these people that were here last night, he says, children. He says, okay, children. And he says, but I don't think they were children. And his boss looks at him and says, what do you mean? He goes, I don't know what they were. He's like, but let me say something to you, Thomas. They're not people. He said, well, we're a little concerned because they want to talk to Mr. John Sutton. And why did they say why? And why were they here so late? And he said, I looked at the cameras and it was really weird what we saw. He says, I don't know. But I think Mr. John is in trouble because they want him They want something with him. And then he proceeded to tell me all about what happened later on, in January with Mr. Sutton.
When he came back.
When he came back from Argentina. And now that's another story. And that one we'll talk about on Wednesday. Strange thing when you talk to somebody, and this is important too. When you talk to people, you need to kind of understand who and how they are and what they. This story, I remembered all of it when his brother retold it to me because it had been years. So talking to Elijah's brother, his name's Solomon. And Solomon told me, he says, look, he says, my brother, you know how he was. He goes, and I said, I always wondered if he had like maybe Asperger's or something. He said, I don't know. He never got tested for that, And they're in mid-50s, now, or Elijah would be. But he said, my brother, I think that, he always could talk to you. He's like, you were one of those people that he talked about all the time. He talked about you quite a bit. Talked about how you were smart and that you had all the answers. I told him, I don't know about that. But his brother was like, I appreciate you always being nice to him. Not many people were kind to him. It was only a few people, and they would always kind of talk down to him. He's like, and from dealing with you and working with you, you and James were the nicest people. I said, James was a great guy. He passed away too. But I said, James was a good guy. I liked him too. And so I ran into James. We were working security at the Peace Park. What's it called? The Eeyore's birthday. James, he is the straight edge. He don't drink. He don't smoke. He don't do anything.
Probably why he got along with Elijah so well.
Yeah, Elijah's the same way. Both straight laced. And I saw James. He's like, "What's up, man?" It's like he always sounded like he had like his nose was clogged. I said, "James, you still haven't gotten that cold taken care of?" And he's like, "What's up, brother?" He always talking to me like that. Always move his head like that. Hey, brother. He said, "Man, I can't be down with all this pot smoke. This whole place is just full of weed." I said, "It is kind of just a weed and hallucinogen festival." And the police are walking around getting a contact high. I mean, it's just Austin. You're not going to find that anywhere else. I'm not even joking. Where the police know that you're just there and the weed is floating up into the atmosphere and creating a hole in the ozone layer. I'm joking.
It's creating a new smoke cloud.
And the police are just like, so the cops were there. They were talking to us because we were doing the security. There were 6 of us and there were 4 of them. And those cops were just kind of hanging out with us. And they were like, man, we get drug tested, dude. So we're there, and if you've ever been to Eeyore's birthday, it's ridiculous, So I'd done it for a few years, and so James was there, and he was with this other company that was working for the people that put it on. We were working directly for the city, and then the police were there on either end. And so when we were talking, it was weird because one of the things that came up, when James and me were talking, was about Elijah. And, I told him, I said, look, Elijah, I believe he's a very good-hearted person, and I believe he's had some things happen to him. And I think that one of the things that I can't describe, I don't know how to describe it. I think that one of the things that thank you, Rita, for that donation. That's very generous. Appreciate it very much. We definitely could use it.
You're always
I think
awesome.
that one of the things that comes up is how you relate to people. And James told me, he said that you and I are his only friends. I said, that's unfortunate because he's a very good-hearted person. He's just very kind, and people take advantage of that. That's unfortunate.
It is.
But there was a woman that they used to work with that was always being very rude to him, very nitpicky.
I was going to say, because everyone needs a friend like James, because someone who's able to sit there and just tell you the truth, although it's hard to hear. Like, if they're genuine and they're kind, they're going to want the best for you. And so having someone like that in your life is always going to be for the better. And it sucks that people didn't recognize the joy in having, or like the worth in having someone like that around, and instead took advantage of him. And it sucks because sounds to me like James was probably one of the only guys I've ever heard to actually piss off these black eyed kids and actually just annoy them to the point of like where they just start acting out. They had no idea what to do with him, how to conduct themselves, because he was just having none of it, and he wasn't giving them any kind of face or just any kind of respect. He was just like, well, you terrify me, but I'm not gonna do what you tell me to do. I'm not gonna listen to you, and I'm not gonna like let you just freak me out. That's probably why their face was changing so much, because they were getting so angry and so annoyed with his behavior. And if he really sat there and just stared at them for two or 1.5 hours, then what are you supposed to do with a guy who you're going to scare someone, and someone just sitting there having a staring contest with you, and you're like, this isn't how it's supposed to work, guy. Just making them just angry. Yeah, but it just, it sucks to hear he died, because I would have liked to meet him, because he sounds like someone good to have in your life. Someone that it would be an honor to be, in his presence, because you could get some good things from him.
Oh,
good energy as well.
I missed part of that because I had to run to the restroom real quick. So what were we talking about?
I was just saying how, like, well, first I mentioned just what kind of guy I thought James was, being a genuine, very truthful guy, and how important that is to have in your life, because then you'll know what he's telling you. Not only is it coming from a place of kindness, but it's coming from a place of fact, so that whatever he's saying is probably
James or Elijah.
Elijah. No, I meant having a guy like Elijah.
Yeah, James was very similar.
Yeah,
but he didn't have, which I think Elijah might have had a condition, but I know James didn't. James is just a very good-hearted person.
Then I mentioned how Elijah is probably one of the only stories I've ever heard where he pissed off these black-eyed kids, and that's why their face was changing so much, because he just wasn't going with their status quo.
Yeah, and because they seem to be on a mission.
Exactly.
And I think that they weren't targeting him, because when I talked about it, how they wouldn't target, I don't think they would target someone like me. And I don't think that their target was Elijah. And I think that they got very frustrated dealing with someone like him, because he's a very genuine, good-hearted guy. Was just like, I'm not going to let you do whatever wreak this havoc you're going to try and wreak or whatever. That's the thing. When you deal with people like I have, you deal with people accordingly. And I've said this before, I don't treat people the way that they are. I treat them the way that I think that they have the potential to be. Now, how many times Anthony's here now? Tony had to run to the restroom. I drank a lot of coffee earlier. So
yeah, I'm drinking some right now.
But what do you because Anthony's been studying, but you're here now. What do you think about what I just said?
But about treating someone the way that they can be?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's good advice. I mean, like the person who I remember originally said that was like, we were watching a Cowboys documentary, and Jimmy Johnson said that, and that's how he propelled like that team, which was not a good team, to the championship. Like,
they were a great team.
92, 93, 95 seasons.
That was a great team. We talking about they weren't a good team.
Well, up to that point, I'm saying.
Yeah, okay, until 91.
Because he inherited like basically
garbage,
a mess, and turned it around and turned it into a championship team. But the thing is, like, if you would have treated those players like that's what you have, the people you have are the people you have, and if you treat them like they're crap, then that's what they're gonna be. But if you treat them like they can be champions and you hold them to that standard, they're gonna have you have no choice but to live up to that.
Wedge has a good question here. He says, did that scream, did it do something? I don't know. Yeah, I do know. That's not necessarily true, because he talked to another good friend of ours that worked with us up. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he worked with us. I'm trying to think, because Oscar knew him. Mm-hmm. When did Oscar pass? 3 years ago? 4 years ago?
I thought it was a little bit longer than that.
Maybe it's been 5 years.
Probably.
No, because it was first year of the pandemic. It was around the time my mom. I thought it was 2021. Anyways, we had a guard that worked for us, and he had liver failure, and he worked for us for years. And I think it was actually cancer, but it caused his liver to shut down, And he worked for us, and he worked with me with that guy at another company. We had talked about him one time, and he was a good guy. I always got along with him real good. He worked for another guy that contracted for us, and when he saw how good we had it, he was like, "I want to work with you guys." And I'm like, I was like, "Why? It's the same pay." And he was like, "Yeah, but you pay people." You remember he said that?
Yeah, it's one of the things I've actually met quite a few different ex-security guards, and that's one of the main things they mentioned. It's like the pay, it was never on time, and it was always like random. So like that's one thing that we can't say about our company is that we always pay our guards.
Yeah,
and we always pay them on time.
yeah. We don't play around people's money, and that's what. And Oscar, he worked with us for. Shoot, I want to say, probably 15, maybe 15 years.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah, I think so. I'm trying to think of when because he came on in 2009. 2009. How many years is that? And then he passed away in 20. Okay, so he worked with me for 11 years, but it would have been 15 years ago or 16 years ago. But he had worked with both James and Elijah. And anyways, when me and James were working at that Eeyore's birthday years ago, this was before, Elijah had this experience or whatever. James was convinced that he did have the eye. He had the ability to see. And James was like, "That's a big dude, man. He's a nice guy. If he wasn't a nice guy, imagine how he could hurt people."
It's funny that you mentioned Green Mile because that's kind of the vibe I get from this guy.
Yeah, but he wasn't like that guy. He was more subtle than that. I think that the thing is, like, they kind of teased him saying that about him, but he wasn't as tall and big as that particular actor.
I wasn't really mentioning,
and he wasn't bald headed either.
The size, it's more like the energy,
the mentality. He was I guess
kind
that
like
in that
kindness,
way, he was,
but like a very soft spoken, but also.
But he was more. He had more of a
tone.
The reason I say he wasn't is because he had more of a smart ass streak to him. Like he would just say things like, "You know what? I'm bored of you." You know what I mean? Like he would just tell, because when we were working at Vignette, this is funny. Okay, we were working at Vignette. Here's another one. Here's another Elijah-ism here. We'll call him Elijah-ism because there's a few. I have a few. I was working with him, and Scorpion, remember this, Scorpion. We were working there, and there was this lady that was always in the front playing solitaire. She was one of the guards from another company called Burns, okay? And Elijah was there working with us at that other company. And there was two of us, and there'd be four of those other guards. They worked directly for Vignette. We worked for the property management company. So it was kind of like we actually were in charge of those guards. Technically, we were their boss when we were on. And I was the site supervisor of that particular account, which was a very lucrative computer startup company. And their head of security for Vignette was a guy named Tony. I'm not joking. Scorp can tell you this, right? And he was a big guy, big, tall guy, and he had the worst flat top haircut you'll ever imagine. He had his hair growing out on the sides, and he had it up too high, and it was like Guile, but not as cool. And I don't know if he was going for that or what. His name was Matt. I'll never forget this. And he would go in there in the gym, and he would work out. And he was a big guy, but he wasn't like some beast. And he'd come out like this, you know? And Elijah was this really like just powerfully built guy, right? And I was a big, powerfully built guy. We would sit there, and this guy would come out, and one day Elijah just goes, "Carrying invisible TVs, huh?" Like, just like he just, like he's got these two. Now it's the big screen TVs are flat. Back in the day though, it's like you would have been carrying like two Trinitrons or whatever they are, And the guy just looked at him and was like, "What?" Like he was gonna beat Elijah up or something, And I looked at this dude and I was like thinking, dude, Elijah's probably got like 30 years of pent up anger, toward the world, and he's not doing anything about it. You might not want to mess with the guy, And so I was just like, I looked at Matt and I just stood up and was like, "Hey, Matt, so let's talk. I got to talk." And I just thought of something, and there was something in the control panel. I said, "We need to get an electrician over here or whatever." He's like turning around and looking at Elijah like, and I'm like pushing him, "Come on, let's go outside, And I said, "I got this situation over here." And then after he listens, he's like, "Turner," he's like, "I know you're just trying to protect that guy from me, And I'm just like, I'm sitting there, I'm like, "Yeah, bro, sure, protecting him from you, man." And that dude was he was the way he was. I haven't seen him since I worked there. Thank God. He was just annoying.
Goofball.
He was such a goofball. He was just one of those, like, I'm tough, man, and I'm in charge, It's like, I don't give a shit what you think you are, And
there's a line in Game of Thrones that I really enjoy. It's no king should ever have to call himself king or something like that.
yeah, you don't gotta like.
Yeah, if you have to call yourself whatever you are, then you're not really that.
I don't know. Some of them old sayings, though, I don't really agree with them.
I mean, I don't live by it.
Because I think some people will tell you exactly who they are and what they are, and people don't buy it. They think, oh, yeah, I'll just. And the person's like, no, I will seriously do this to you. And they don't listen. I've seen it happen.
Mm-hmm.
I saw this guy. He's a good friend of mine. He's a black Cuban dude who used to be the head of security at this place right there on, I can't remember. It was off of Cedar Street. I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was like a salsa merengue place. Nicest guy ever. Played the saxophone there. It was real cool. And he was at this club called Abrados. It doesn't exist anymore. It's been decades as it was there. And those roid heads in there, he told the guy, get out of my face or I'm going to slap you unconscious. And dude's like, go ahead. And he just slapped that dude like into another dimension. Like I literally think that guy is still like in the sixth dimension.
In the shadow realm.
Yeah, he's in the shadow realm because I think that there's people like that will tell you. We were talking about this the other day with the sayings.
Yeah.
What was it? There was one that we were talking about.
Well, there's
the enemy. My enemy is my friend.
That was a bad one. But then also just what was it? I think we also mentioned Anthony had a really good one, but the one that I was thinking of was man, I'm drawing up a blank. I can't think of any now. It's funny.
Yeah, maybe if Anthony, if you're listening, you could pop in and tell us because there was a couple.
There was a couple that we came up with that just made no sense.
It didn't make any sense.
I remember that like some of them are incomplete, and one of them I said was the customer's always right, but the full sentence is the customer's always right in terms of taste.
Yeah, that's another one. There's Anthony. What's up?
There we go.
So Anthony's going to school us here.
Remember those sayings or what?
Yeah.
The other night you and Tony were coming back from the gym, and you and Tony were talking about it. I was kind of
like one of them I remember was what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, which like
is total bullshit.
Yeah,
because you could be in a bad accident and be paralyzed.
Or
how the hell is that?
Or like that's psychologically scarred and turned into a scared chihuahua for the rest of your life.
Yeah,
or whatever. Like I mean, you see that with people.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Let's break that one down.
I hate that one.
Yeah, that is so stupid because imagine if you were a crusader down in. Yeah, you got to get off of the words there. Down in the Holy Land, you're not going to be like, oh, okay, so my enemy is, the Saracens, so I'm going to make friends with the, Rosicrucians or the Templars. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're the good guys.
Yeah.
They may be just as savage and unholy as the people that you're fighting, or, the remnants of the Pharisees. They had their own version of troublemakers, and so. Yeah, they're all enemies. That doesn't mean that they're your friend because they're enemies with your enemy. That just means that there's an enemy of your enemy that's probably not a good guy, not a good person or whatever. Think of it like this. You're out in the woods and you run into a dog man, right? A crawler shows up. So what? Does that mean that he's going to help you? No. They could just both.
Like simple-minded thinking.
As the dog man is killing you and eating you, he's like that jackal or hyena that's going to be taking bites out of you while you're laying there dying. I've seen it happen, not in real life, but on these shows where these lions will take down a kill, and there'll be a jackal or a hyena running up and grabbing bites off of that animal that's being torn apart. It's so horrible. So the whole enemy, my enemy is just the most nonsensical bullshit,
Yeah, exactly.
That is not the truth. That is not the case. And you making friends and alliances with somebody just because they hate somebody you do, get real, dude. Like, seriously, that is not correct.
Sailor Nemesis pointed out the one that you mentioned too. The blood is thicker than water.
Yeah. Like that's the next one I was going to bring up. Like it's like half the saying. It's like I didn't know that until like one of our chatters had posted in the live chat. Like I mean, we have a smart audience. But like blood is thicker than water. Like it's like truncated, because the full saying is like the blood of the coven is thicker than the water of the womb, which means the exact opposite.
Yeah.
Like it means that you're not supposed to be just blindly loyal to someone because they're your blood relative, which is stupid. Like blind loyalty to a person, just it doesn't make.
Well, I'll
any
tell you
sense.
one saying that's true: no one will screw you over worse than family.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people like, not for me. I can honestly say, like, my own family, they screwed me over, some of them, but not to the extent that some other people outside have. But I've seen it happen a lot. I've seen people who just put all this stock into their brothers and sisters and whatever because they're blood, and just get taken to the cleaners because of it. And not only just by them, but by supporting every nonsensical thing they do to their own detriment, because they'll get attacked and get messed with by people because they're blindly supporting something that's evil, and that's their own relative.
Yeah.
So
the problem with these sayings is that they're all very situational. Like they don't apply across the board like people try to make them make them out to be. Like keep your friends close, but your enemies closer. I want some of these people to stay the hell away from me. I don't want them anywhere near me or any interact. I don't want to deal with them at all, especially our enemies.
Yeah, in your life, you're going to have a handful of people that you can truly rely on and trust. You're going to have that, and you may not have. Well, for me, I've been fortunate that I could probably count the people I trust on both hands. People that some of them have passed away now that just never did anything wrong to me. One of them is a good friend of mine that I just talked to the other day, and he had gotten into a car accident, and his son actually works for us. And I told him, I said, we've been fortunate, me and him. I told him, I said, you know who it is. I said, we've been fortunate. We've known each other for almost 3 decades. It'll be 3 decades in 2 years. And to have friends like that is a blessing, and somebody that is never going to betray you or say anything crazy. And the ridiculousness of people saying, well, all of his friends are just future enemies. That is the biggest crock of bullshit. Because Jeff, our friend Jeff, the electrician, I told him, I said, Jeff, we've known each other how long? He says, well, I was 9 and you were 10, right? I said, okay. Well, we weren't in short pants, but we were, older. And I said, so aren't you afraid that I'm going to screw you over? He said, well, you're playing the really long game. It's like 41 years. It's like,
I mean,
that's a long time to wait around to stab somebody in the back. If you're going to do it, you might want to do it.
You have a lot of long relationships. I mean, people for 20 plus years, even your business partner you've known now for 20 years.
19
years.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, I've known him for 20.
Mm-hmm. But
because I knew him for almost a year and a half before we became partners. And Scorpion worked for him. Mm-hmm. And so we ended up, we knew each other. So knowing him for 20 years and being friends, but working as partners, on January 1st, it'll be 19 years. And then my other business partner, and get this, I'm a horrible racist, right? But yet he's Mexican and my other partner's black. And it'll be 12 years with him. 12 years. And he corrected me the other day. I was like, no, it's been 12 years. And then, of course, our friend Bubba, who passed away, who was the one that introduced us all and introduced me to my real estate agent and to my lawyer. And so they all knew each other and they were all friends. And I've been friends with them all ever since. My real estate agent, my mortgage broker. It's been 8 years.
He's Blasian.
Yeah, he's black and Asian. Mm-hmm. And then my lawyer, it's been 7 years. But if you're gonna talk about, oh, this guy's gonna stab you in the back at some point, everybody that's his friends, you got to go way back for some of these people. Like Scorpion just said, he's been working for me for 28 years, and I've never screwed him over. Nobody's gonna stick around that long if you're gonna stab him in the back. But I think it's hard for some of these scoundrel type people to understand this. They don't understand being friends with someone and being understanding. And let me say something else. Being a student of the human condition. Somebody asked me the other day, they said something really dirty and mean. They said something kind of mean to me, and then they apologized. That happens quite a bit. But one of the things he said, he goes, well, I don't understand why you forgive these people. I said, why would I hold on to that? What good is it doing me to hold on to that? Mm-hmm. What good does it do to you to catalog every slight and every little thing you do and say? It's detrimental to them more than it is to you. Because you know what it's like when you go door to door and try to talk to somebody just to badmouth them. Yeah, they may listen to you, but after that, they're going to be like, man, that guy's got, a lot of things going on. And that makes you look bad because once they stop and go back and listen, they're going to be like, why is this guy politicking so hard to talk bad about these other people? And why does he do it so often? It's going to come around for these people, and it already has. But instead of them going, hey, maybe I need to evaluate myself and my behavior, they double down and they keep doing it. And then they wonder why nobody wants them around. Nobody wants them in their groups because you're a malcontent and you cause a lot of problems. It's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have problems like this in my day-to-day world, which is what led my friend that owns the restaurant to ask me if I was okay and if I'm not happy doing what I do. And I said, I don't know, because I've never had problems like this before. In my day-to-day life, yeah, things were settled differently. And in this, these people, they go on and on and on with this craziness, and people do that. It's like understanding how Elijah's mind worked and being able to grasp and perceive. If you can perceive how somebody is and how they think and their thought processes, you can understand honesty. And that's one thing that these people don't grasp. They don't understand that. Let's put it this way. It's kind of deep, but think about it. They don't understand your understanding. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They don't understand your level of perception to perceive what these other people are trying to convey to you. That's what to me makes us good at what we do here at PRT, because whether it's me, you, or Nelly, whoever's getting the stories from these people, and we all do it, we listen, we pay attention, we give them a voice. And, I take it a step further and I try to go deep into it with these stories and give people a little bit of the person's personality.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they're not here to tell it, you're responsible to tell it, and not only tell it correctly and give them a voice, but to make it entertaining, because that's why you're here. And so that's my thing. And I think that these people, they can't grasp. They don't understand it. And to them, it's just as foreign as the planet Neptune. They will never understand it. They don't grasp it, and they're never going to. And it's not for them to grasp and understand. Now, the problem comes with them. They're not willing to just go away and be not understanding. They got to attack you, because what they don't understand, they fear. And what they fear, they have to destroy. And what they can't control, they're afraid of it. So then that leads to trying to destroy it. And so what they do is they go around and project, and they say, what I just said right there, they're going around saying it, saying, oh, yeah, well, it could control us. I don't want to control you. I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want any part of you. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to be your friend, but I don't want to be your enemy. I personally don't care about you. Just go away and leave us alone and stop rioting. And then when you do that, that's it. But when that doesn't happen, then you have to take it a step further. And I think there's a lot of jealousy that comes out from these people because they can't do what we do. They can't relate to people like that. And when you can't relate to people, that's it. You have to be a bit of a sociopath and not understand things to do those kind of things. You would have to be a sociopathic person to sit there and attack people unwarranted and do what they do. You have to be. Because if you had even the slightest understanding of the pain that you cause people, of the problems that you cause people. When a thief breaks into your house, they don't care whether or not you find stuff that you're looking for.
It's worse.
They don't care. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a thief will break into your house, steal your stuff, but then when that stuff gets stolen from them, they'll get angry and act like, why did this happen to me?
I stole this fair and square.
Yeah, they don't realize like, oh, I'm doing this to someone. So it's like, if it happens to you, you deserve it. It's fair game.
I think that's, a big part of what we all need to work on as people. I've always thought that if we could develop an understanding, what do I say about perception?
Perception is a key that unlocks the intangible power of the spirit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Power without perception is useless. You have all this power and you don't have a perception to see what the people need from you. Then what the hell are you doing in that position? Step down. Or be removed. That is the key. And so there are times when I come to the studio, I'm tired. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to mess with it. I have an obligation. Because if you're going to be a leader, if you're going to be somebody that's going to do things for people, then do those things for people. Be selfless, not selfish. Be the vanguard, to go out and make things clear for people, help people. Be that shield that people need to protect them, make things safe for people. That's what you do. You don't go out and aggravate people and violate people and do the things that these people are doing and harass and just be, vile.
Show discernment.
And have discernment. Yeah, there's a lot that goes into being a good person. And I personally love Christmas time. I know a lot of people say they hate it, whatever. I give until it hurts every year, Christmas time. That's what you're supposed to do. And like I said before, I'm not trying to get you to give. I'm talking about giving to people you love, at least those that you love, care about, you're close to. Giving that gift isn't about like, look, I'm giving you some material thing for some kind of later, whatever, to get some kind of incentive. What do you call it? Like you give somebody something because you want something back.
Ulterior motive.
Yeah.
You give it to, no way, man. Give it to them because you love them.
Yeah. And
give it to your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, your cousins, your friends, your family, people that do things for you all year long. The guy that bakes your bread, the lady that cuts your hair, or man that cuts your, whoever cuts your hair, the people that you depend on, that you do. If you have people that you deal with all year long, don't you think that Christmas time is a little bit of a time just to go and say, hey, here's a small token of at least to help them, to give them something back? Because so many people, I see it too all the time. They will have a good situation with someone and that person will give and give and give and give. And they just go, thank you. Yeah, cool. Bye. And they don't even once stop to look and go, hey, maybe I should give back to this person. That's the worst, because and these are the kind of people that'll have a waiter or a waitress and they think, well, I'm never going to deal with this person again. Who cares? I mean, what if you want to go back to eat there one day? Because if you don't have a moral obligation, then you look at it from a pragmatic standpoint. You're like your guy that used to live with y'all, and he would order pizza every day, and he wouldn't tip.
Yeah.
I mean,
it just made us look bad, because then when those guys would want to, when we want to order pizza, those guys would be like, "Oh, that's the house that doesn't tip," and then it's like, well, we can't trust the food that they're going to deliver because we don't know if they're going to do something to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I love about Christmas, especially this year, that I've kind of realized is that when you give to those close to you, it kind of makes you reevaluate that person, like what they like, what they dislike, what their interests are, what they might, really enjoy as a gift. And it makes you or just go over them as a person again, because I've been having to do that with everyone in the house.
You have to think about like who they really are.
And it helps really appreciate them again.
So speaking of giving, we're going to give something here because we got the hoodies now. And I'm excited about it. I don't know what colors. We got to get them up here on Wednesday. We'll be presenting them and showing you guys. That's going to be awesome. So let's do a hoodie giveaway tonight. It's wintertime. What's up? It's wintertime. Let's do it. So tell me if you haven't won. We got to run here, folks. I got to go to work. But tell me, hey, I haven't won, and you will win something. A hoodie tonight. To get that, you got to put the banner up here. Giveaways, there it is right there. Now, if you're on the Patreon, you get priority. And if you've asked for your stuff and you haven't gotten it, keep asking. Don't be afraid to pester us because it's yours. After 2 months, you get a swag bag. After 6 months, after that, you get a swag bag, and it's every 6 months. So what just happened there? The screen just clicked off.
Is it back on?
Yeah. What happened?
Oh, I don't know.
So here's one right there. Smart person says, I have not won. I want a hoodie badly, please. Okay.
M. Wells.
M. Wells. Cool. You win. You get a hoodie. There it is. Give me another one here. Cajun says, I never won. I want a hoodie. Well, you just won too. Tell them what they got to do.
Can I choose one as well, or is it? Because I like the name of this one.
Who?
Dark Tower Gunslinger.
Where's it at?
It's a little bit in the middle. Please, I haven't won anything yet.
Okay, so Robin, you're a member. And since you're a member, are you a Patreon member, Robin? I don't know if you're a Patreon member. Okay, Dark Tower Gunslinger, you're the third person in that you haven't won. Andres, you've won before. But Andres, get with me if you really want something. Just hit me up. So you're a good dude. You're always around. You're in Abe's chat. You're always around. I'll hook you up. Just email me. Dark Tower Gunslinger says, please, I haven't won anything yet. Okay, you win. Tell them what they got to do.
So if you guys look down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see a banner going across. That banner says that has the email that you guys can do to giveaway. All you got to do to redeem that is to give us your YouTube handle, your name, your address, the size that you would like to wear, and I don't know if we should do like specifics because I don't know what kind of hoodies we have right now.
You guys are free to ask you guys are free to ask what color you want. We have pretty much all of them.
Okay, awesome then.
But we don't, while supplies last, we can do what we can. We're going to bring them up to the studio on Wednesday. Hopefully we'll have them all up here on Wednesday, and we can lift up the shirts and the hoodies and show you. So Robin, you haven't won before. Robin Wagner, where do you live, Robin? Just don't tell me the state out here on the thing. Just say, is it in the South where it's warm, or is it in the cold? Just say, cold or hot. That's all you got to do. See, like the reason I ask is, there you go. Excalibur just says it's too hot for a hoodie in Phoenix. So if you're East Coast, okay, so East Coast, but is it hot or is it cold, like where you live typically? Then I can give you a shirt or a hat. I mean, a shirt or a hoodie. So my point with this is that, that if anybody is listening to the show and you live in a warm climate, don't be like, oh, I don't want a hoodie because it's, I'll take a t-shirt. We have shirts too. So we'll give you a shirt. Oh, come on. Don't do me like that. Look at this. Lucky Molly. She says, you have crushed a senior. Come on. Don't do me like that. Robin, we're going to give you, it's 4 degrees. Okay. Then you need a hoodie. So we'll give you one too. All right.
I will repost that link to the store, Jackie.
Molly, just be the first one on Wednesday. I can't do a whole, I got to go, but just be the first one on Wednesday. Come back and I'll throw you something. Just be there on Wednesday. Okay. I got to run, folks. I really got to go. But seriously, just send me your information. And so there's 4 people winning tonight of the hoodies. Okay. All right. So that'll happen. Now, if you're one of those people who says, like, I haven't gotten my stuff, whatever, there's some people like that. I blame Maddie, because Maddie, she's not in the chat tonight. She's on vacation, but she is the one that's in charge of the mail offs. She'll be back later this week, in this coming week. And so we'll talk to her and be like, Maddie, what is wrong with you?
Yeah, send us your complaints.
You're a horrible person.
And we'll make a whole little, collage of your complaints and give it to her for Christmas.
All right, guys, we got to run, dude. We're going to leave with the Krampus song here. Let's see what we got here. Here it is.
Nicht so ein frohes Weihnachtsfest für all die sich schlecht benehmenden Kinder. Bald in meinem Korb, dann in den Sarg.
It's Christmas time, and all seems fine. You spent the year without fear, misbehaved and mistreated others. He comes for you, brothers and sisters.
Jingle bell time is a swell time for Krampus to spend the night. You'll be hiding, filled with fright. Your Krampus is punishing delight. Lashing his chains and jingling the bell. He's come to take you to hell. Too late to repent, your tears are spent. Krampus comes calling. For mercy you'll be longing, beaten with branches and sticks, 'cause you chose to play trick. Joke's on you, you selfish fool. Now, what's left is a dreadful mess. Jingle bell time is a swell time for Krampus to spend the night. You'll be hiding filled with fright, your Krampus's punishing delight. Into the basket you'll go, taken in the snow. Tears you'll cry and pain you'll sow. No one can save you, not that anyone should. I wouldn't even if I could. Should have been better, should I behave? Now you're the one, no one can save.
Gute Nacht an alle, die gedient haben. Seien sie im kommenden Jahr gut gelaunt, oder ich werde dich nicht sehen.